You might think your dialogue is broken because your dialogue is bad, but more than likely your dialogue is bad because your scenes are broken. And if you learn to fix those, then you learn to permanently fix your dialogue problems. And what I've found after teaching screenwriting at universities and mentoring hundreds of writers over the last decade is that weak dialogue is almost always a symptom of a much bigger scene problem that has to do with scene structure.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
So I'm going to give you 3 critical fixes to lock in your scenes so you can stop repeating the same dialogue mistakes forever, to help you learn to treat the root cause of the problem that's just manifesting itself as bad dialogue. And it's like when you go to the doctor. I mean, you show up saying, well, I've got a bit of a cough and a little bit of a fever and shortness of breath. I'm fatigued all the time. Those are all symptoms of a bigger problem, possibly something like pneumonia. Now, you can treat the cough with cough syrup and it might get better. You can get more sleep, you might feel better, less fatigued, but you're not dealing with the deeper, more underlying issue. And that's what happens with weak dialogue. Writers just think, oh, I just need to fix my dialogue, to give it cough syrup, when in fact the bad dialogue is going to persist because you're not treating the underlying issue. But like any doctor, as a screenwriter, you have to learn to recognize the symptoms and realize they are, in fact, symptoms of a much bigger issue. And there are 5 big weak dialogue symptoms that just seem to present themselves over and over, and I help my students permanently fix these, and they are the red flags that typically indicate your script isn't just suffering from a minor cough, but full-blown pneumonia. The first symptom is exposition-heavy dialogue, and this is a classic, and it's where characters are telling each other stuff they both already know, but it's to get information across to the audience. It's lines like, you know that this business has been in the family for 50 years, and our grandfather started it when he had barely nothing. So yeah, that's bad. The next big symptom flag, on-the-nose dialogue. And this is just when characters say exactly what they mean. And this is perfectly fine in the first draft, but not subsequent drafts. And the trap with this one is sometimes you need to use on-the-nose dialogue so you can clearly communicate to the audience or the reader what is going on. But the general rule of thumb is when a character says something like, "You're the worst person in the world," it's usually bad. The next flag, Q&A dialogue. And this is where one character is asking questions and another character is answering those questions. Just question, answer. Usually this has to deal with exposition, but characters sitting there asking and answering questions is not a movie. That's an interview. And then comes chit-chat dialogue. And we do this in real life, but on screen it's boring and wandering and just all fluff and filler. And yes, you should absolutely delete all of the, "Hi, how are you? Well, I'm good. You?" Okay, you delete all that stuff. And then realize you're still going to have issues with the scene. Remember, these are indicators, symptoms of bigger issues. And the last one I'm going to mention might ruffle a bunch of your feathers, but it's what I call overkill dialogue. And it's where your dialogue either has more punctuation than words, so lots of ellipses and exclamation points after everything a character says, but it can also include an overabundance of swearing. Now, yes, I realize some characters swear a lot, but if all you got are F-bombs and 4-letter words, there's nothing going on in the scene, and that's a bigger problem. So those are the most common symptoms of bad dialogue, but how can you really fix them? And if a scene is working, there are strategies to fix them, and I'll link a video at the end that will help you out. But when I work with students and see these red flags, there is often a bigger issue underneath, and it has to do with the scene itself. Simply, it's broken in a fundamental way. So let me give you 3 ways to treat the main problem. First, actors are there to act, not stand around like mannequins at a store that's going out of business. If your characters are just sitting or standing and talking, your dialogue will almost always fall flat. Think about Anakin talking to Padme about sand in Attack of the Clones.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
It's awkward, it doesn't fit, and why? Well, because they're just standing there talking about sand. 9 times out of 10, bad dialogue happens when actors have nothing to do in the scene. And the fix? Give them something to do. In screenwriting terms, this is called giving them activity in the scene. Put them in a location where sitting or standing still is not an option. Make them fold laundry or pull weeds or chop vegetables, fix a flat tire, change a diaper, scrub blood out of the carpet, whatever. Give them an activity that is either mundane but revealing of their character or what they're feeling, or directly related to what's going on in the scene. Activity gives subtext a place to hide, and it makes your dialogue instantly feel real. The second way to make your dialogue work by fixing the scene is the result of a problem that I see all the time. And the problems start when a character enters the scene without any direction or goal. I mean, they wander, the dialogue wanders, there's either a bunch of filler or exposition or lots of Q&A, just lots of stuff that shouldn't be there. Here's the deal. Every scene in your script must have a reason for being included in the script. It must have a purpose. And the way to give it a purpose is for every character who enters that scene to have something they want that they are pursuing in that moment. And they're trying to get it using any tool they have at their disposal. The words they use, their dialogue, is one tool they can use to try and get what they want. And the want gives their words purpose. It gives them direction. It gives them meaning. And if there is a want, the subtext is super easy to include and create, because if someone wants something and they can't outright say it, okay, they'll naturally say other things that hint at it. And I can't overstate this enough. Every character in a scene must want something in that scene. Not one character, all the characters. Because if only one of them wants something and the other doesn't, you end up with scenes like that turkey conversation in Geely.
It's turkey time.
Huh?
Gobble, gobble.
She clearly wants something. They're confused. And the scene dies a slow, embarrassing death, and it makes the dialogue awkward and horrible and turn into a meme. So figure out what each character in the scene wants. Even if it's just to get out of the conversation as fast as possible, that's still a goal. And once each character has a clear want, you're going to quickly notice why the dialogue isn't working, and you'll have character motivation to help you sort out better dialogue. The third core problem causing bad dialogue doesn't just result in bad dialogue. It results in bad scenes and usually bad screenplays, and it is the death knell of a scene. Let's say I want a raise, and I go into the scene wanting a raise, and I head into the boss's office and state awesome on-the-nose dialogue of, "I want a raise." And the boss looks up and says, "Okay," and they go back to work. Scene's over. No. When one character wants something, another character should want something in opposition. They should clash, or at least get in each other's way. A story is about someone who wants something badly, is having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. That's what a whole screenplay is about. That's what entire sequences are about. There's usually 8 of them. And it's definitely what every scene should be about. Characters want something, but they have trouble getting it. That means there must be conflict. It has to be hard, or it has to cost them something. And what this means is if you have bad dialogue, it's highly likely you have either no conflict, not enough conflict, or the conflict is just not hard. So, same scene. I want a raise. I go to the boss's office. I'd like a raise. The boss says, "Well, I can do that, but there's a catch. You have to move out of state." Well, now, how bad do I want the raise? I mean, maybe it's easy for me to move. Maybe I want to move, but more than likely, I probably don't want to move. There is now inherent conflict, and conflict is the required DNA of every good scene. Characters should get what they're after or fail because of conflict with another character's goals. Otherwise, it's just a character talking to themselves in a room while they're pretending to threaten another character.
I'm gonna take you to the bank, Senator Trent. To the blood bank.
Now, is "to the blood bank" a solid 80s action movie turn of phrase? Well, absolutely. But it's ridiculous because there's no conflict in the scene. Plus, he's sitting. And on top of that, who knows what he wants? So let's take our boss scene and rework it. Let's give the boss some activity. He's watering the plants in his office, tenderly caring for them. The boss wants the employee to move to a new office. The employee wants a raise or a promotion, but they don't want to move. So they both have a want that's in opposition, so there's going to be some conflict. So now the employee confidently walks in, and "I'd like to talk about my role within the company." But without looking up, the boss says, Plants can only grow for so long in the same pot. After a while, something has to change. The soil, pot, how much sun it gets. In that case, I feel like I'm going to need a bigger pot. But there's a catch. The boss hands a folder to the employee. Inside is a plane ticket to Alaska. If you want the promotion and the raise that goes with it, I need to change how much sun you get. Let me know by the end of the day. And the boss goes back to caring for his plants. There's activity, there's want, and conflict all rolled up, and you can tweak the dialogue if you want, but this is much closer to where it needs to be than the original just walking in, I want a raise scene. So when you go into each of your scenes and find any of those three problems, there's no activity, there's no clear want, there's no conflict, you're going to find most, if not all, of your bad dialogue mistakes. They're just going to be so glaring. But don't fix the dialogue first. Fix the scene first. The dialogue fix will be much easier. But if your scenes are working and you're still noticing some dialogue mistakes, watch this because it will give you some practical ways to sort out the mistakes that you're making. And if you want to go deeper and work with me to learn how to write a Hollywood quality screenplay, there's a link below for you to learn more about that. Or if you just want to keep writing toad, sand, turkey, and blood bank dialogue, okay, don't click that button, but you should still watch this.